So Jacob talked to Laban, which is Rachel's dad, and says, I have to have her. You know that conversation that the guys say before they put a ring on a young girl's finger is, can I have your daughter in marriage? And so Jacob comes to Laban and says, I got it bad. Like, I have to have her. I need her in my life. What do I have to do to have her as my wife? So Laban says this, and if you ask me, I think Laban saw an opportunity here. He says, okay, I would much rather have her go to you than some other people. And so here's what I would love to do is go ahead and work for me for 7 years. Okay? 7 years of your life, devote it to working for me, and then I will give you her as your wife. Oh, is that all? Is that it? Just 7 years? I have to have her. You fell to the ground. You are so in love. Your heart is overjoyed that you have found the woman of your dreams. And then her dad says, yeah, just stick around for 7 years. Waiting is tough. Waiting is so hard. Knowing that God will provide is one thing. And the beginning to have faith that God is the great provider is one thing. But then when you see something that you really, really want, and then it's just wait 7 years. Wait 7 years. And in fact, devote your life to working for me for 7 years, and then I will give you my daughter. Just put yourself in Jacob's shoes. He fell to the ground. He is in love with this woman. And her dad says, just stick around for 7 years and work for me for free. And then I'm going to give you. So you're going to work for her for 7 years of your life. That's a long time, isn't it? The thing with waiting is it builds value for what you're waiting for, doesn't it? So those 7 years of Jacob's life of working for Laban, it's building a value. You see Rachel walk across, and she's walking across the field, and she's feeding the sheep. And in the back of your mind, you're thinking like, I can't wait until she is my wife. And so this waiting, it built a value for Rachel. Jacob never fell out of love. He never thought twice about, man, I am working so hard just for her. His value for her just kept increasing, because sometimes when we really want something and God's promised us something, and we're even on a mission to pursue what God has promised us, and then we are told it's going to be 7 years later. That waiting, it builds a value for when that actual breakthrough comes, doesn't it? So as we wait, we're waiting in anticipation. And so Jacob is waiting. He can't wait to have her as his wife. And so he built up this value. Rachel is his prized possession. She's everything he has ever wanted in a woman. And so he waits and he works for 7 years diligently. So what the Bible says is that he put his heart and soul in working for Laban so that he could receive Rachel. Well, the time has finally come for Jacob to receive his wife. In verse 20 of chapter 29, it says this: so Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel. Listen to this. You want to talk about a love story? Jacob worked 7 years to get Rachel, but they seem like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Wow. We should write that on a card and give it out to everybody as for our Valentines. It seemed like only a few days. Remember earlier we were talking about God and how 1,000 years is as a day to him. And now you have Jacob, who's worked for 7 years. 7 years of his life. But they only felt like a couple of days because of his love for her. That waiting process is something different when we're looking in anticipation for what is ahead of us. He didn't walk away. The Bible says that he actually worked diligently for 7 years of his life. And so he had her in front of him, in front of his sights, that he could, she's going to be my wife. Verse 21 says this, then Jacob said to Laban, give me my wife. My time is complete, and I want to make love to her. Right? It's been 7 years you've been working for this woman. It's time, Laban. It's time for me to receive my wife. It's time to receive that prize. Yeah, it may have felt like only a couple days, but my love for her has never went away. I'm ready to take her as my wife. Look at what Laban does, though. Jacob's worked for him for 7 years, and what Laban does is this, is Laban throws a gigantic party saying that Jacob's getting married. He doesn't say to who. You're getting married. We're excited. It's been 7 years. Let the festivities begin. And so he throws this gigantic party, and the food and the wine are flowing. And then he sends Jacob to his tent. And then he sneaks his older daughter, Leah, into the tent at night with Jacob. So Jacob wakes up in the morning and goes, this is not Rachel. This is Leah. And so Laban actually says, well, it's really not a good custom of ours to give away our younger daughter first. So I'm actually going to give you my older daughter. But then you can also have Rachel for another 7 years of your life. So he's received Leah as his wife now, and he's married to Leah. But then Laban says, I will also give you Rachel as your wife. But you got to commit to another 7 years. He tricked them. Laban's a tricky guy. And so is Jacob, right? They both have kind of tricked people out of things in the past. And so Jacob signs up for another 7 years for Rachel. 14 years of his life devoted to receiving his wife. What a love story, isn't it? What a love story of a man who just fell to the ground completely in love, infatuated with the wife he's going to receive. He's even duped out of receiving her when the time frame came that they said that it was going to happen. And then he gets to receive her. 14 years of his life devoted to receiving his wife and working for his wife. This story is so unheard of today, isn't it? It's so unheard of to work so hard and so long for something. 14 years, 14 days is a long time. You're talking like 14 weeks? 14 months. No, Jacob devotes 14 years of his life to receive his wife. Jehovah Jireh is the great provider. He is the great provider, and he does provide for us. But his provision comes in so many seasons of waiting. It comes through waiting. His provision, his time frames are so different than ours. And so God is always providing for us. He loves us so much that just that love that Jacob had for Rachel, that 7 years felt like a couple of days. The Lord loves us so much that he knows what's best for us. And so even though it's not in our time frame, it's in his time frame because he is the good father. And he knows what he's doing behind the scenes. He knows what he's preparing us for. He knows what our past looks like. And so some of the things that he's working through to get us prepared for our future. He is the great provider. And his time frame doesn't always line up to ours. And if we're really honest, thank God that happens, because so many times I want something now that God is saying, hey, I'm going to hold off for that for a while, because what it will do is it'll build value for you. It'll build value in what I'm about to bless you in. So be content in what I've given you, and then let the value build in what you're going to be blessed with. His timing is very different.